Hey Techno Studs, let's do a little demo about network interface cards. So what we're going to be talking about is what is a NIC or a network interface card. We're going to talk about how to configure those NICs on a Windows machine, and then we're going to get into viewing NIC configurations. So let's get started. The machine that you're looking at here is an EC2 instance on AWS. AWS stands for Amazon Web Services. So Amazon Web Services is a place you can go and spin up a lot of virtual machines and other services. And here I spun up a virtual machine. So we're going to be using this virtual machine to go over our demo today. And now it doesn't really matter whether you're dealing with a physical machine or a virtual machine. The steps that I'm going to show you right here are really the same, no matter whether you're dealing with a physical machine or a virtual machine. All right, first let's talk about what a NIC card is, a network interface card. So a network interface card was given its name because it used to be a card that went into a computer. You can see here that this card right here has a interface that is a network interface. It interfaces with the network, and so that is why it's called a network interface card, because it has this NIC here, and then it's a card that plugs into the machine. Nowadays, you don't see it nearly as much as being a card, a separate card. Usually nowadays, you will see that a NIC is built into the motherboard, but you do still find like the higher end servers that you will still have a card that you drop in there that has multiple NICs in it. So this is a network interface card, but this is integrated into the motherboard. The network interface is integrated into the motherboard. So now we just call these NICs. So now the next question is, how do we configure these NICs? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out how to do exactly that. So down here in the bottom right-hand corner, our tray down here, if I hover over it, it says Network 2. I can click on it and it pops up with a menu. The icon here looks like it's a computer screen with a little, I believe that's a cable, an Ethernet cable sitting to the left of it. And so now I'm going to click this Network 2 and it pops up with a dialog box. The dialog box has our Ethernet connections on it. So I'm going to select this Network 2 and go into the configurations of this. At the top here, we can see the network profiles. So this is public or private. Those are the two selections you have. It just has to do with how open this computer is to accepting connections on the network. And right now, since it's set to public, it's less open to accept connections to other devices because it assumes that it's in a more dangerous area since it's a public network. And then I scroll further down. The metered connection is just in case I want to shape the traffic somehow or monitor, or I should say, limit the traffic so there's not as much traffic going across this. Perhaps maybe it's a line that I pay for the traffic, or I only have a certain amount of data, so I can meter that connection. Something I'm typically not going to do on a LAN. And then we've got the IP settings and DNS settings here. And so we'll get into that more here in a second. And then down here, we've got the properties, in which we'll also talk about those properties there. So let's get into the IP settings here. So the first thing that I can do is I can click on Edit to get into a little selection here, whether I want to have it automatic, using DHCP, so Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, which means that this machine will reach out and ask if there's anyone that has an IP address that it can have, and it'll go through that process of getting an IP address. But I'm going to select manual right now, and then when I select manual, I can either turn the manual on or off for IP version 4 or IP version 6. So for now, I'm just going to do IP version 4. So I'm going to turn that on. And within here, then I can assign it an IP address. So maybe I have my network here, 192.168. and then I always leave a little range at the end of my IP range for statically assigning IP addresses. That is, that I'm going to assign an IP address rather than it be assigned by a server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign it maybe 239 is going to be the address I'm going to assign it here. And then give it a subnet mask. For a lot of your networks that you're going to have are going to be just a /24 or a class C address. So I'm going to assign it 255.255.255.0. We'll talk more about that later. And then a gateway. So the gateway of my particular network is 192.168.42.1. And then preferred DNS. And a lot of cases, the whatever your gateway is going to be, or your gateway is going to be possibly your DNS server. And so for this case right here, I'm going to type that in. And then maybe you have some sort of alternate. And for instance, one of the alternates could be like Google, so 8.8.8.8, or maybe you're using OpenDNS or something to that effect. So this is how you manually assign an address to that network interface card. So next what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to view this information. So I'm going to cancel out of this because I don't want to commit this information. And then I look down here at the properties, and the properties has some of that same information of the information that was assigned to it through DHCP. So I can tell it's DHCP because it's set to automatic here. And it's signed an IP address of 172.31.44.159. It's got a preferred DNS server right here, and then some other information. One other thing that I'll point out here, it also has the MAC address down here. So here's one way that we can actually view the information that we have that's assigned to this. And we'll learn more about MAC addresses, and we'll learn more about IP addresses later. But this is some of the information that gets assigned to that NIC. One other thing that we can look at is, or view some of that same information, is by pulling up a command prompt and typing in ipconfig. Hey, like my videos? Hit that like button. ipconfig will show us some information about this machine, and so specifically around this NIC card. So we see Ethernet 2, and then the information that's assigned to Ethernet 2. And so it's some of this just same information that said that was written before, although this could be possibly an easier way to get to this information. So I'm going to also type in ipconfig/all, and by typing in ipconfig/all, then I'm going to get more detailed information here. So I may need to know things like the MAC address, where this did not show the MAC address up here. When I do it this method, it does show the IP address, and then some other information as well with this. Just a little side note, if I was on a Linux box, ifconfig would bring up some of the similar information. So there you have it. We talked a little bit about what a NIC is and why it's called a NIC. We talked about how to configure the NIC, and then how to view those NIC configurations. Thanks for joining me.